coming today, I think, because my family is sick at home. So, but that's all right. That's such a typical Mother's Day thing, isn't it? Far out. I do have to say, I laughed when Cass was talking about the Mother's Day stall. So my Mother's Day stall present this year was a little beanbag, a little mini beanbag for your mobile phone. But my beautiful son brought it home in the car on Friday, and he loved it. And so he was throwing it about and jumping it around and chucking it about, and there was all of a sudden all these little beans just started going everywhere. So I was like, oh, thanks. So he shoved it back in the little gift bag with all the beans. so I got a bit of sewing to do at home for my bean bag for my mobile phone, which is a beautiful Mother's Day gift. I love it. I love the precious things that they think of for Mother's Day. Now, happy Mother's Day to all you mothers out there. For anyone that hasn't gotten their present yet, I thought I would give you some presents with some memes that I found on the internet about mums. So if I can have the first one, all these mothers might relate to this. The quickest way for a mum to get a child's attention is to sit down and look comfortable. Very true. Next one, thanks, Barb. Silence is golden. Unless you have kids, then silence is suspicious. Very true, very true. When your mum voice is so loud, even the neighbours brush their teeth and get dressed. I am definitely like that in the mornings. My mum voice is very loud. And then the last one, this is the next one. Some days I amaze myself. Others days, I put laundry in the oven. Mums, I'm sure you've had those days. I definitely have. And last one, my nickname is Mum, but my real name is Mum, 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 Mum. I know how a lot of you mums feel with that. Today being Mother's Day, I am going to talk about a mother in the Bible. But I thought we'd make it a little bit fun. And I'm going to give you 5 guesses as to who the mother is in the Bible that I'm going to be talking about. If you are in the tech department, if you're on worship, if you are on staff, you're not allowed to answer this because obviously you know who it is. But for the prize, I've got a prize of, if anyone has forgotten a Mother's Day present, this is yours. I'm going to give, but my beanbag, I do like Black Forest chocolate, so this might be my Mother's Day present if you can't get it. So 5 guesses. Someone give me the first one. A mother in the Bible. Moses' mum? No, it's not going to be that one. Ruth? No. Hannah? No. Naomi? No. Ooh, it looks like it's going to be mine. One last one. Sorry? Sarah, no, yes! Black Forest chocolate for me. That is wonderful. Thank you, church. I'm winning today. I'm going to be talking about a mother in the Bible who possibly never thought she would be a mother. A mother who actually had a pretty hard life, but a mother who God loved and cared for in really special ways. So if you've got your Bibles with you, we're going to turn to Genesis, and also your clothes with Sarah. And we're turning to Genesis chapter 16. So let me read from verse 1. Now Sarai, Abram's wife, had borne him no children, but she had an Egyptian slave named Hagar. So she said to Abram, "The Lord has kept me from having children. Go sleep with my slave. Perhaps I can build a family through her." So Abram agreed to what Sarah said. So after Abram had been living in Canaan for 10 years, Sarai, his wife, took her Egyptian slave Hagar and gave her to her husband to be his wife. He slept with Hagar and she conceived. When she knew she was pregnant, she began to despise her mistress. Then Sarai said to Abram, "You are responsible for the wrong I am suffering. I put my slave in your arms, and now she knows she's pregnant. She despises me. May the Lord judge between you and me." "Hey, your slave is in your hands," Abram said. "Do with her whatever you think is best." Then Sarai mistreated Hagar, so she fled from her. This story is a little bit like a soap opera that you might see on TV, maybe a home and away scene or the Real Housewives. But this is the story of Hagar. Hagar is a slave girl from Egypt. She was probably acquired when Abram and his family moved to Egypt when there was a famine in the land. So in Genesis 12, we read that Sarai was this beautiful woman, and Abram and Sarai needed to go to Egypt. But Abram knew that if the Egyptians saw how beautiful she was, they would actually kill Abram and take Sarai to be in the Pharaoh's palace. So they concocted this whole plan of saying that they're brother and sister. So Sarai, they enter Egypt, and Sarai goes into the Pharaoh's palace. The Egyptians see that she is so beautiful, goes into the palace, and it says here that because this happened, Abram was treated well because it was his brother, it was her sister. And because of this, he acquired sheep, he acquired cattle, he acquired male and female donkeys, and male and female servants. So one of these servants was probably Hagar. Now, unfortunately, Pharaoh is inflicted with some serious illnesses because of this ruse that Abram and Sarah had concocted. And when he finds out that Abram and Sarah are actually married, he banishes them from Egypt, along with all their possessions and along with Hagar. So Hagar is taken from Egypt, her homeland, and she settles in Canaan. And then Sarai comes up with this brilliant plan of surrogacy. Just the chapter before, God had reminded Abram, had taken him out into the night sky. I'm sure you all know it well. And he had promised that his offspring would be as numerous as the stars, and from his seed would be a great nation. But Sarai had become impatient, and she comes up with this plan of surrogacy. It wasn't uncommon in those days for servant girls to have babies of their barren mistresses. That wasn't uncommon. But what I find interesting is what actually happens after conception. So Hagar starts to despise her mistress. Now, some have suggested that maybe it was because she was forced into this pregnancy and she didn't want it at all. Others have suggested that women in these ancient times actually obtained honour through marriage and children. And maybe the fact that Sarai couldn't have children, but now Hagar was pregnant and Hagar could have children, there may have been a bit of jealousy, a bit of pride, a bit of bitterness between the two. But whatever happens, whatever reason, the relationship between Sarai and Hagar sours so much that it becomes unbearable for Hagar and she flees. So let's read on in verse 7 to what happens next. The angel of the Lord found Hagar near a spring in the desert. It was the spring that is beside the road to Shur. And he said, Hagar, slave of Sarai, where have you come from and where are you going? I'm running away from my mistress, Sarai, she answered. Then the angel of the Lord told her, go back to your mistress and submit to her. The angel added, I will increase your descendants so much that they will be too numerous to count. The angel also told her, you are now pregnant, and you will give birth to a son, and you shall name him Ishmael, for the Lord has heard of your misery. He will be a wild donkey of a man. His hand will be against everyone, and everyone's hand against him, and he will live in hostility towards all his brothers. That's a beautiful blessing, isn't it? She gave this name to the Lord who spoke to her. You are the God who sees me. For she said, I have now seen the one who sees me. That is why the well was called Bir Lahai Roi. It is still there between Kadesh and Pered. So Hagar bore Abram a son, and Abram gave the name Ishmael to the son that she was born. Abram was, oh no, I don't need to say that. Do I need to say Abram was 86 years old when Hagar bore him Ishmael? You are the God who sees me. The Hebrew translation to this is El Roi. There are many names for God in the Bible. El Elyon, El Shaddai, El Olam, Adonai, and they give us these rich, beautiful revelations of who God is and the character of God. But this is the first time in the Bible that God is actually named by a human. And how fitting it is that it's named by a slave, a foreigner, someone rejected by her family, sitting by a well in a desert, alone and wounded. No one sees her, but El Roi, you are the God who sees me. What an encouragement this can be to us today. God sees us. He sees us in our good times, and he knows all the great stuff about us. But there are times in life where it feels a little bit like a desert. There are times when we feel alone. There are times when we feel wounded, rejected, we feel lost. But like Hagar, he sees us too. He sees us in the aloneness. He sees us in the rejection. He sees us with our wounds. He sees us sitting by our own spring in the desert. And he comforts us there too. I'm intrigued by the conversation that Hagar has with God. Hagar, slave of Sarai, where have you come from and where are you going? And Hagar just answers, I'm running away from my mistress, Sarai. Hagar only answers half of the question. She answers that, where have you come from? Where is she going? She's running away, but where to? Sitting by the spring, I wonder if she even knows where she's going. My guess is that she probably doesn't. But I'm intrigued by God's answer, and it wasn't what Hagar would have expected. Go back to your mistress and submit to her. I will increase your descendants so much they'll be too numerous to count. You are now pregnant, and you will give birth to a son, and you shall name him Ishmael, for the Lord has heard your misery. The God who sees not only sees her, but helps her as well. He helps her to the next step. Go back and submit. And he provides for her. You will give birth, and I will increase your descendants. When we're in those desert spaces in life, we can take comfort. We can take comfort in El Roi, that God sees us. But we also can take comfort that God guides us when we're lost, and he provides for us as well. So Hagar goes back to Abram and Sarah with confidence, knowing that God saw her, this slave girl, and her child. And it intrigues me that his promise to Hagar was the same as Abram's promise. I will increase your descendants so much that they will be too numerous to count. It also intrigues me that Hagar actually stays in the picture in this story. After Ishmael is born, he technically should have been Sarai's son, but he continues to be Hagar's son, growing up with Abraham as his dad and Hagar, strangely, as his mum. Now, something beautiful is happening here. This Egyptian slave who is mistreated and all alone in a desert meets God by a well. And like many others in the Bible who have met God by a well, she is transformed. She goes back to Abram and she becomes a mother, still a slave, yes, but now with a son. She encountered El Roi. She encountered the God who sees. I wonder if you have had moments in your life when you have felt deserted, when you have felt abandoned, when you felt mistreated, or you felt like you've just in a little bit of a desert place at the moment, sitting by a spring and just not knowing where to go. The other day I had a little bit of a moment like this, a little bit of a Hagar moment, which mums you might understand. It was Anzac Day, and we have a tradition in our family of watching a morning service, either going to a morning service or watching it on TV, and then we make Anzac biscuits, and then we usually go out in the afternoon for a picnic. It's all beautiful. That's our tradition. It's really good. But 48 hours beforehand, you might have seen that was my son with the broken arm. 48 hours beforehand, I had been up at an emergency with Zach with a broken hand, and we didn't get home that night until after midnight. It was a very busy night in ER. The next day was Wednesday, and we had the seniors service, and I love the seniors service, but I had to be there. It was one of those things I had to be there. So Wednesday night, I was exhausted. I was very tired. So Thursday morning comes around, and we end up just sleeping in a little bit, and we listened to the Anzac Day ceremony on 96.5, which they did an amazing job. Everyone's a bit tired. Morning tea comes around, and I'm like, right, everyone, come on into the kitchen. We're going to make Anzac biscuits. Come on, this is our tradition. And then I get the eyes rolling, and I get the whinging because they're playing Minecraft and they don't want to do it. And so they kind of drag themselves to the kitchen, whinging all the way. So I was like, by this time, I'm like, this is going to be so annoying having these two tired, whingy kids trying to make Anzac biscuits. So I said, look, just leave it. I'll do it myself. That's fine. Go back to Minecraft. That's fine. So I sat in the kitchen, started making Anzac biscuits all by myself, exhausted and tired. And then the tears started welling up as I started lamenting the days when they were younger and they wanted to be in the kitchen with me, and it was so exciting. And then I started thinking, you know, we're about to go on a picnic, and I'm going to be like in the car with these whinging teenagers for the next half an hour, and I really did not have the emotional capacity to deal with that. So then I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. All these hormonal mother things, I'm so tired. So I shoved the biscuits into the oven, and ever so calmly go to Alistair and say, you can do whatever you want with the kids. I just need some space. I need some time. So like Hagar, feeling mistreated, I fled. I got in the car and I drove. I knew that I needed to be back by sunset, so I didn't go too far, but I went up to the mountains. I drove up into the mountains and looked over the valley, looked over the city, had a space where I can clear my head. But as I sat all alone on that mountainside, I had that feeling of being so alone. I'm not sure if you've ever felt that, but I was surrounded by people. To the left of me, there were like families having picnics, and to the right of me, there was a couple having a picnic, and like it was a lookout, so there was people just coming and going, and I was sitting by myself with my sunglasses, just not with the teary eyes. But the loneliness actually felt really heavy. And I'm actually sure that Hagar would have felt this as she sat alone in that spring in the desert, that aloneness, that abandonness. But God sees. God sees in the aloneness. I ended up coming back in the afternoon as the afternoon sun was fading, and we sat down at the table and had a family chat about what happened and what we can do to make things a little bit better. But a few days later, Zach was playing on my phone, and he went to look up something on Google, and he saw my last Google search. Now, I have to say that my last Google search was in my desperation and my abandonment on the mountain, and he comes and he looks at me, he's like, Mum, what is this? And I had typed in, motherhood sucks. I just have have to say, mums out there for Mother's Day, if you type that in, you will get some really interesting stuff. It was beautiful reading these blogs of other women that have gone through motherhood issues and are just having bad days. And they share some really lovely things like taking time out for yourself, organising babysitters, just making sure that you're being looked after. But it was actually a really beautiful time because I turned to Zach and I said, remember that day? I just said, I was just having a really bad day, darling. And he turns to me and he just says, Mum, I know, it's okay. And he just gives me the biggest hug. And it was just really beautiful. And that hug reminded me that God sees. God sees us in our good times, but He always sees us in our bad times. And He sees us, and He guides us, and He provides for us. So getting back to Hagar has her son Ishmael, and Ishmael grows up as Abram's son. But as we know, a few years later, Sarai, who is now Sarah and Abram, Sarah has a baby, Isaac. So we're going to jump a few chapters in to chapter 21 and we're going to see what happens to Hagar. Chapter 21 verse 8 says, the child, which was Isaac, grew and was weaned. And on the day Isaac was weaned, Abraham held a great feast. But Sarah saw that the son whom Hagar the Egyptian had borne to Abraham was mocking. And so she said to Abraham, get rid of that slave woman and her son, for that woman's son will never share the inheritance with my son Isaac. The matter distressed Abraham greatly because it concerned his son. But God listened to him. Do not be distressed about the boy and your slave woman. Listen to what Sarah tells you, because it is through Isaac that your offspring will be reckoned. I will make the son of the slave into a nation also, because he is your offspring. Early the next morning, Abraham took some food and a skin of water and gave them to Hagar. He set them on her shoulders and then sent her off with the boy. She went on her way, and again she wandered in the desert of Beersheba. When the water in the skin was gone, she put the boy under one of the bushes. Then she went off and she sat down about a bow shot away, for she thought, I cannot watch this boy die. And as she sat there, she began to sob. God heard the boy crying, and the angel of God called to Hagar from heaven and said to her, what's the matter, Hagar? Don't be afraid. God has heard the boy crying as he lies there. Lift up the boy, take him by the hand, for I will make him into a great nation. Then God opened her eyes and she saw a well of water. So she went and she filled the skin with water and gave the boy a drink. God was with the boy as he grew up. He lived in the desert and became an archer. This really is like a soap opera, isn't it? I'm sure Sarah is a really beautiful person, but this story does not put her in a good light at all. When this happens, Ishmael would have been about 15 years old, and Isaac was about 2 or 3 years old. So unfortunately, Ishmael does a very teenage thing and mocks Isaac at this great big festival. And great big feast. And Sarah, seething with anger and jealousy, sees this and really does not want anything to do with this teenage boy, Ishmael, and the slave Hagar. And she again calls for them to be banished. Abraham becomes very distressed at this because it concerns his son. It concerns Ishmael. The literal meaning of this very distressed is actually he explodes with anger. You know, he's really fond. 15 years of this son. Like there's a father-son bond. But Isaac is now Abraham's rightful heir, and it was wrong, culturally wrong, to mock the guest of honour at a great feast. So I love how this scene plays out. Early the next morning, you can imagine that there might not have been much sleep with Abraham or Hagar or Ishmael. Maybe Sarah might have had a very restful night, but the others might not have. Early the next morning, Abraham lovingly packs this food and this skin of water and he gives it to Hagar. He puts them on her shoulder and he says his final farewells. I wonder if there would have been tears as they walked away. You know, so many beautiful memories that Abraham would have had, these father-son memories. But again, Hagar finds herself in the desert, wandering with nowhere to go. And eventually the food and the water runs out and they're both stuck in the desert with nothing. And this is I find one of the most distressing scenes in the Bible. One, as a mother, I pray that I never have to go through. She puts her severely dehydrated, dying son under a bush. And then she goes and she sits about a metre away. And why does she do that? Because she can't bear the sight of him dying. And there she sits and she sobs. So heartbreaking. I have never had to watch my child die, but I have had moments when my children are in agony, and it is heart-wrenching. There is this guttural reaction inside of you that says, God, I would do anything to take this pain away from them. But again, Hagar finds herself in this desert place, alone and wounded and desperate. And again, she encounters El Roi, the God who sees me. And again, he guides and he provides once again. What's the matter, Hagar? Don't be afraid. God has heard the boy crying as he lies there. What beautiful words of comfort. Don't be afraid. Often in the Bible, we hear this time and time again, don't we? Moses, don't be afraid. Joshua, don't be afraid. David, don't be afraid. Elijah, don't be afraid. Jacob, don't be afraid. Joseph, don't be afraid. Mary, don't be afraid. Jairus, don't be afraid. Insert your name here. Don't be afraid. In those moments of desperation, in those moments of utter despair, we're reminded, don't be afraid. And why? El Roi, because God sees. The angel of God says to Hagar, God has heard the boy crying as he lies here. God sees what is happening. And in the midst of when we don't know what to do, just like Hagar, who put her son down a bow shot away because she did not know what to do, we're guided by the one who does know what to do. And he says, lift the boy up, take him by the hand. And then just like Hagar, we're provided for. God opens Hagar's eyes and there's this well of water, and she fills the empty skin and gives Ishmael a drink. And God is with the boy as he grows up. This slave woman is taken from her hometown in Egypt. She finds herself being a mother, not out of choice, but being forced into it. She despises the decision and is mistreated for her behavior, and she runs to the desert. She flees to the desert. This slave woman has a beautiful encounter with God, the God who sees her when no one else does. He gives her a hope and he gives her a future. She will be a mother and her descendants will be many. She goes back to her master and she is given a son who is loved. And then this is all dashed away again when she is forced out of home and back into the desert. And she finds herself in one of the most painful positions one could ever imagine, unable to provide for any longer for her son. And now she has to sit and watch him die. No parent should ever have to experience this. But El Roi, no one else can see the pain that she is in. No one cares about this slave woman or her child. No one else knows her whole story. But God does. God sees. God guides. And God provides. I have sat with enough mothers to know the pain of motherhood sometimes. I have sat with mothers who have had children dying. I have sat with mothers whose children are making all the wrong choices in life, and it's causing so much destruction and pain along the way. I have sat with mothers whose children are suffering so much that they would do anything to take the pain away. I've sat with mothers whose marriages are breaking up and they grieve the emotional scars that it's causing on their children. Motherhood is amazing, but it can feel like a desert place sometimes. I think life is amazing, but it can feel like a desert place sometimes. You don't have to be a mother to know what it feels like to be wounded, to know what it feels like to be abandoned, to know what it feels like to be deserted, or to suffer in silence. So if you can take anything out of today's message, I would love you to walk away with those two words: El Roy, the God who sees. He sees you in the great time, but he also especially sees you in the desert places in life when no one else does. And he hears your words of desperation at those times. And I pray that in those times in your life, you may also be comforted that when he sees, he also acts, he guides, and he provides. It may not be what you want. Like Hagar, I am sure that she did not want to go back to Sarai. But he knows. If you are in a desert place at the moment, we're going to listen to a song. If the band can come up, that would be beautiful. And during this time, I would just encourage you to close your eyes and just to, like Hagar, share that with God. Just take a moment to be open and to be honest with him. And I guess take courage that he hears you. And maybe just ask for that guidance. Ask for that provision, whatever that looks like. First, let me pray. Lord, I want to thank you today for the many mothers in the world. Thank you for those who have shaped us. Thank you for those who have loved us and cared for us along our life journey. But Lord, we want to lift up to you today those like Hagar who are struggling with motherhood at the moment. Lord, we want to lift up to you today anyone, not just mothers, who are struggling with life at their moment in their own desert place. May you be of comfort to them today. For you are El Roy. You are the God who sees. Lord, you are the God who guides. You are the God who provides. Let us be reminded of that today. Amen.